Welcome to part 3 of my Getting Started with Android Studio video tutorials. In this video, we're going to demonstrate how to create a list of items like the one that you see here in front of you, create custom layouts so that the list contains more than just an item. For instance, in this example, you can see I have a peach, but I also have a description under it, and I have a price to the right-hand side. So that's going to be discussed when we discuss custom layouts. And the third thing that we're going to cover in this video is displaying images. So for instance, if I were to click on peach or tap on peach in this app, I will see an image of that item appear. And I can do the same thing for tomato and for squash. So this is the app that we're going to build in this video. Let's go ahead and get started. So to clarify the goals of this video, first, we want to demonstrate how to use the ListView component to display a list. Secondly, we want to create a custom layout so that each item in our list has some interesting information in it, more than just the item itself. And then third, we want to demonstrate how to incorporate images within our app using the ImageView control. Now, some things prior to this video were already discussed in parts 1 and parts 2. So in part 1, we just created a project, developed the app, and then test ran that app. So the elements of creating a project were covered in part 1. In part 2, we talked about switching between screens, which are called activities. In part 3, we're going to be doing all of that. We're going to be creating an app, we're going to be switching between screens, but we're adding list views and image views within this app. So you can see how parts 1 through 3 are cumulative. All right, so let's go over to Android Studio and make our project. I already covered setting up projects in my part 1 video, so I'm going to move relatively quick through this part just to save a little bit of time. So we're going to start by clicking Start a New Android Studio Project. We're going to name it List App. You can go ahead and click Next. You can leave the API level as 4.0 or higher, whatever you want to be comfortable with. You can go higher than that, but 4.0 is what I started with. So on the next screen, you can click Empty Activity, click Next, just leave everything as is. This should be called Main Activity with a layout file of activity_main, and just click Finish. So now you want to locate your activity_main layout file. If this did not open automatically, which it should, it's located under your Resources folder, and then expand out Layout and click activity_main. So that's the same thing. Now you will probably be in design mode to start, so let me do that as well. And I'm going to shrink down the Project Explorer to give myself some more space right here. Okay, we're going to delete the component that says Hello World right here. So we can click on it in here, or you can click on it in your component tree right there, and then you can just push your delete key and it will delete it. What we're going to want next is a container. We want to have a list view control in here. So we're going to simply select list view in the container category and drag it in. And we're going to give it a name here. So I'm going to call it my list view. So as soon as I push enter, it will populate that with some example information. That doesn't mean that the list contains anything at this point. It just means that this is what it would look like if we were to generate a list. Now, the layout width we want to have match parent. Now, if it does not stick like that, you can simply go over to the text version of this layout file, and we can just manually do it. So I'm going to copy match parent from the layout width of the container to the layout width of list control. So where it says layout width, we're just going to make it say match parent. And then I'm going to save it, and I'm going to close it. And that's all we need to do with that activity. Okay, so next up, in our Project Explorer, we're going to return back to main activity. Actually, let's add the list items first. Let's go to the Values category under Resources. So here's your resources once again, find values and find strings. So it's convenient to have all of your strings, for instance, the items in your list, all in one place. So that's why the strings file is right here. You can change the name of your app. This is what is appearing in the action bar right there. But to create an array of strings, we can simply do this. I'm going to put a left angle bracket and type the word string. Now you can see you have two options here, so I'm going to arrow down to string array and push tab to autocomplete. And we have to give a name to this array. Now usually array names are plural, so I'm going to call it items. So these are my list items. And then I'm going to create a closing bracket for this. And we're going to put some items in it. To put an item within this array, you can type the word item. And we're going to call the first one peach. And then the next item is going to be a tomato. You can actually make these items anything you want. The whole reason I picked peach, tomato, and squash is because they were readily available in my kitchen. So I took pictures of those three items for this demonstration. So the last item is a squash. Okay, so those are going to be the items, and the next thing is going to be another string array of the prices. So the first item in prices will correlate with the first item in the items array, and the second item will be the same as the second item, so they will be parallel lists. So I'm going to call this prices, and the first item will be 99 cents. So I'm going to go ahead and put in that amount, and the second item will be $1.49. And the third item will be 89 cents. Okay, now we're going to also include some descriptive information, so I'm going to make another string array, and I'm going to call it my descriptions. And the first item in the list will say fresh peaches from Georgia, since Georgia is the peach state. And the second item will say fresh salad tomatoes from Ohio. And the third item will say fresh yellow squash from California. Okay. All right, so we have three arrays that we can populate into our list view. So let's go back over to main activity, and let's just test our list to begin with. To begin, I'm going to create a reference to our resources that I'm going to call res, just to save some typing. The next thing that we're going to create is a reference to the list view that is in our layout file. So let's create a field variable for that. Since we're in the main activity class, we're probably going to want to use it again. So our name for the list view was my list view. It's a good idea to keep the names the same so that you can keep it straight in your mind what you're pointing to here. So we're in the main activity.java file here, but we're pointing to a component that's in the layout file in activity_main. And we're eventually going to want to link that together with our list of string items. All right, so right here we've declared it, but we haven't initialized it yet. So what is my list view going to hold? Well, it's going to hold a reference to that list view that we're going to be searching for. So we're going to use the findViewById method to go look for it. And we gave it an ID of my list view, so the names are the same. And when that method finds it, it's going to return a value. We're going to cast that value as a ListView object and remember it within this class as myListView to keep the name the same. All right. We're going to basically want to do the same thing with the strings that we created over here in strings.xml. All right, so let's just start off with this first list right here and just make sure that our list is getting generated. So we have a string array that we called items, and down here we're going to initialize it when this activity is created. So we're going to use that res variable that we just created, and we're going to use the getStringArray method, which is the top one on the list here. It's expecting us to use it. And we're going to look for our resources, through our resources, for an array that we called items. Now with just that information right there, we can preview our list with one more thing. We have to create a layout file that will merge these two things together. So we have this list of strings and we have a list view. The list view will need some way to present this information. So that's where the layout file is going to come in. So I'm going to right click on layout right here within your res folder. So if this is shrunk down, expand out res, right click on layout and click new layout resource file. Now we have to give it a name. So I'm going to call it my ListView detail. All right, so that's all lowercase using underscores to separate the words. Now the root element of this is going to be a text view, all right, because we're basically going to repeat in our list a bunch of text views. That's why I'm choosing that. And then I'm going to click OK. And here is a quick preview of what it's going to look like. Now the only thing that I'm going to change in this, I'm going to just click in this space right here, and I'm going to just make the text size larger. I'm going to make the text size 24 SP, just so that you'll be able to see it a little bit better. It's the only change I'm going to make. I'm going to click Save, and I'm going to go ahead and close this. All right, so as I referred to earlier, we're going to merge together this items, which is a string list, with this list view. And to do that, we have to use an adapter to merge those two together. So I'm going to say myListView.setAdapter to be a new array adapter. Now, before I type the rest of this, I'm actually going to auto-complete it. I just want to point out here in the list, the new array adapter is of type T. Well, what is type T going to be? So let me push enter, and you can see the cursor is blinking right there. Well, this was a list of strings that we were giving it. So we're going to say everything in this adapter is going to be of a string type. Use tab to autocomplete. And now between these parentheses right here, we have to give 3 parameters. The first thing is the context of this array adapter, which we can use the this keyword for. It's basically saying this list. So in this list, we're adapting this array for it. And then what layout file are we going to use? Well, the one that we just created, so I'm going to type r.layout, layout, and we called it myListViewDetail. And then we're going to give it an array to manage. And so every item in that list will become a text view item, and then it's going to put that within our myListView. So we called that items. So our array is called items. All right, now that didn't quite all fit on one line, so I'm going to shrink down my Project Explorer so you can see it now. And then you're going to want to push play to preview if this works. And I'm going to go ahead and use my Nexus 5 to preview that. And in a moment, it should pop up. And I'm trying to get that out of the way for you so you can see that a little bit better. So if you don't have, oh, I can put it on the screen again in a second. All right, so we have a peach, a tomato, and a squash. So our list view is working. All right, for this next part, let's delete line 23. Otherwise, it's going to tell you that it's in use, and you won't be able to modify our new and improved layout file. All right, so go over to project, and we're going to just delete my ListView detail and remake it. So I'm going to go ahead and click or right-click my ListView detail and select delete. Click OK. And let's make one that's going to include all of that extra information, the prices and the description. So I'm going to right-click Layout again, select New, Layout Resource File, and we can keep the same name. We'll call it My ListView Detail, but this time it's going to be a relative layout. It's not going to be a text view layout. And go ahead and click OK. All right, I'm going to go ahead and shrink down my Project Explorer to make this a little bit bigger. And we're going to drag in a text view. And I want to pay attention to the arrows that it's giving me here. The arrows is telling me where this will be relatively aligned. So basically I'm anchoring it to the top and to the left. And that looks okay to me. You just don't want it to be too big because then the spacing between each item could be way off. All right, so if you need to delete and do it over, you want to get it somewhere in this upper left-hand area. The only thing I'm going to really change here is the text size. So with the properties open, you're going to put in a text size of 24 SP. That's going to make the name, this is going to be the name part of the text view, larger than the description. So I'm going to change the ID of this to name text view and push enter. Now you could just leave the text the way it is, but I like to see what each control is going to contain. So I'm just going to change the text property to name, even though we're going to overwrite it at runtime. Next up, I'm going to drag the text view in, and I want it to align with the bottom of the name field. All right, so this is going to be the description. So I'm going to go ahead and change the ID to description. Text view. I'm going to change the text to description. And I'm going to leave the rest the same. Okay. And then lastly, I'm going to put price over here, and I want price to be aligned to the top of the name text view, but I also want it to be aligned to the right side. So I'm going to change the ID to price text view, and I'm going to make the text size 24 to match name, 24 SP. I suppose I can change the text property to price. Now it looks like description is a little bit off to name, so let me reorient that. That's better. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And now let's go back to our main activity. So in main activity, we're just going to create a reference to our other arrays. So we had another string array called prices, and we had another string array called descriptions. And we need to load those up. All right, so when this activity is created, they need to be initialized with something. So prices is going to look through resources for a string array called prices. Again, another good example of why you keep the names consistent. And third, we have descriptions. So following the same pattern, I'm going to load in the descriptions and get those initialized as well. All right, at this point, we're going to make another class that we're going to call items adapter so that we can merge these three items into that layout file. And the computer will know how to do that because we will have told it how to do that within that class. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new Java class. It's going to be a supporting class for this main activity file. So right-click on your top package under your Java folder here, and you're going to select New Java Class. And we're going to give this a name of Item Adapter. And the reason why we're calling it that is because we have this items array, so we're going to call it item, and we're going to call it an adapter because it's going to adapt the items in that list to fit into that list view that we have built. And it's going to be inheriting, its superclass is base adapter. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and select base adapter. And I think that's all we're going to do there. All right, so we're going to go ahead and click OK. And right off the bat, it's going to tell us that we need to implement its abstract methods. So abstract methods are unimplemented methods that are required for you to fill out. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now, if you hover over the beginning of the line here, or you push Option Enter, it's going to give you your options here to implement those methods. So we don't actually have to type them all out, all the method headers and everything. We can say, implement those methods for me, and it'll say, okay, you need to get count, you need to get item, you need to get item ID, and you need to get view for this to qualify to be inheriting from base adapter. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and it goes ahead and fills in these things for us. So our item adapter is going to be using those arrays that we put over in main activity. So let's just go ahead and copy these. So I'm going to copy these items, prices, and descriptions. Copy that, go back over to item adapter, and then paste those in. That's going to save us a little bit of typing. All right, so it has this get count method. In other words, how many items are in this list? So our get count method should just look at items and return the length of the items. The next thing is if we want to get a particular item in the list, then what we ought to say is, okay, well, give them item I, right? Because this is taking in I, which is the index of something. I forgot the S. All right, so items at index I, get that item. And item ID, well, right now that's just the index, so we're just going to make that I. So if they pass in I, they're going to get I right back. All right, so those are the methods that it's requiring us to fill out, except for one, and that's the get view. So this get view is going to show, basically we have to explain to Android here how to present this information. So to do that, we're going to need what's called a layout inflator. So we made this layout over here called My ListView Detail, and we want to essentially take that template and put stuff in it, and then put it into that ListView component in our main activity. So that's what that's going to do. All right, so we're going to create a field variable called layout inflator. And it's really common in Android to start off these names with an M because they're members of the class. So I'm going to call it M Inflator. Actually, it's ER, isn't it? Yeah. All right, so layout inflator, M Inflator. All right, so now that we have this, it's only declared, it's not initialized with anything. So let's go ahead and make a constructor for this class. So if we're going to use this class, this is how you're going to use it. You're going to call it item adapter, and we're going to give it a context. You have to know where this is going to get used. And we're going to need to initialize those three arrays, the items, the prices, and the descriptions. Otherwise, we won't have anything to fill it with. So I'm going to call it a string array I. You could give them the same names and use the this keyword, but I'm just going to keep this short and sweet. So we have another string array called P and a string array called D. Okay, and let's go ahead and initialize those. So items is going to hold the value of whatever gets passed in as I. Prices is going to hold the value of anything that gets passed in as P. And descriptions is going to hold the value of D. And Lastly, Inflator needs to get initialized, and this is how you do it. You're going to say, give me a layout inflator. Oops, grabbed the wrong one there. We want a layout inflator. Within this context, so our context is called C, and we're going to get the system service, and then we can tell it that we're just going to use one of its constants that it provides. So it provides a context layout inflator service. All right, so that's already provided within Android. I'm going to shrink this down so that all fits and then you can see it better. Okay, so this is the constructor that we just created. This means that if we're going to create an item adapter, we have to provide this information so that we can do our part of putting that information into our layout. So down here at the bottom is the last part of this, and that is how we're going to inflate that view and put stuff in it. Now, this takes in 3 parameters, a integer called I, which is basically the index of the item in the list that got clicked, or whatever, the item in the list that it's currently working with, the current view that it's operating with, and any view group that it belongs to. We're actually not going to use these within this method. We're only going to be using this. But we have to supply those anyway because it's an abstract method that we have to define. All right, so I'm going to create a variable called v, and it's of the type view. And it's going to take our layout inflator that we called M-inflator for member inflator, and we're going to inflate it with that layout that we called my ListView detail. Oh, and the second parameter is we don't need. So this inflate method takes 2 things, a layout and a view, but we can just say null for that. All right, now there are 3 text views within that layout. So again, we have to import text view, and let's keep the names the same. We called one name text view, and just like before, we're going to use that good old find view by ID. Oops, v. We have to look within this current view for something. So find view by ID. So this is actually making this a little bit different than what we've already done here. We're looking within this particular view that that we've inflated here for a control called what did we call it? Name text view. Yeah, r.id.name text view. All right, now we're basically doing this same line again, but we're just changing the things here that we're calling it. So the second one was called description text view. And then the third one was price text view. All right, so now we can dig into that text view and find those stuff. And since we can find it, we can change stuff about it, like what it says, which is exactly what we want to do with it. So next up, let's make a string called name, and the name of it is going to be, what did we call that? Items, yeah. All right, so items at index I. So this parameter I is the current item that it's creating in this list. So if it's going through peaches, tomatoes, and squash, that's indexes 0, 1, and 2. So item 0 is the peach, item 1 is the tomato, item 2 is the squash. And next we have the description, so we'll call it DESC for short, This is going to be descriptions, descriptions at index I. And we have one more called price. Let's call that cost just to avoid naming conflicts. And this is going to be in the prices array at index I. Now that we've retrieved that information, let's put it in the text view. So we're going to say name text view, set text to name. And we're going to take description, text view, set its text to DESC, and price, text view, set its text property to cost. Okay, and the only thing we have left to do is return this view. So we fulfill this method's promise of returning the view. All right, so this is saying, okay, within that view, which happens to be the layout file, there's going to be 3 text views. I want to put in 3 strings, the name, the description, and the cost, and let's put that in those controls and return the view. All right, so now that that's done, let's go back to main activity and see how it looks. All right, so to put this together, to use our new adapter, we called it an item adapter. So that's going to be, we're going to basically have to create a reference to it. So we'll just call it item adapter. And it's a new item adapter. And notice how it pops up and says I need to give it a context and 3 string arrays, the items, the prices, and the descriptions. So we can just put this context, here's the items array, here's the prices array, here's the descriptions array. Now that's only referencing the item adapter. We actually have to use it. So where are we going to use it? We're going to use it in my ListView. So set the adapter to item adapter. Now we're going to save it and go ahead and push play. And we'll see if this works. Now this should present 3 text views within each item. So we have the peach, which is the name, the fresh peaches from Georgia is the description, and 99 cents is the price. So we're reiterating that down the list view for each item. Okay, so that worked fine, but this is still not interactive. So I can click on it, it's not going anywhere. So next, let's create another screen that's going to show an image of each one of those items. So let's open up our Project Explorer, and we're going to create a new activity right here under our package called List App. So we're going to right-click the very first package, select New, which is at the top of your list, and then you're going to slide down to Activity. You can choose from the gallery and select Empty Activity and click Next. Now we're going to give this activity a name. The purpose of this activity is really to display the details of an item that you've clicked on. But the only detail that we're going to really show is a picture. So I'm going to call it Detail View or Detail Activity. You can call it anything that you want. And click Finish. All right, so that's generating the Java class and the layout resource file. The layout resource file is called activity_detail. It should pop up right next to it. If it did not, then you can drill down into your resources under the layouts, and it should be right here. I'm going to shrink down the Project Explorer to give myself more room again. And we really only want one control in here. You can add more to extend this app, but it's under the Images category, and select ImageView, and we're going to just drag one somewhere into the layout. Now this is a constraint layout over here, and we just need a picture for the time being. So I'm just going to pick this IC launcher, which is the default, and click OK. And that's just basically a placeholder right now. Now you can use these constraints to align this center and vertically, or vertically and horizontally. Or you could select from here and click the vertical alignment and the horizontal alignment. That's another way to do it. Either way, I'm just going to put it in the middle of the screen right here. Okay, this is all we're doing with this activity layout file. So just save it and close it for the time being. Now let's go ahead and make it so that this activity can go from this screen to the other screen, or in other words, this activity to the other activity. To do that, we're going to say my ListView dot set on, capital O, on click listener, on item click listener, actually. So this is what we want right here, on item click listener, and I'm going to push tab to autocomplete. And when I start typing on, it should be the very first item in the list is on item click listener, and I'm going to hit enter, and it should set up the whole method for me. So I didn't have to type the rest of this. Now, what do we want to have happen when we go to, or when an item is clicked? Well, just like in the previous video, in the part 2 video, we talked about intents. So I'm going to skim through this a little bit because it was explained in the previous video. But I'm going to create an intent, and I have to import that. So option enter, and I'm going to call it show picture, or actually I'll call it show detail activity. And whenever you start an intent, you need to have the application context. And then you need to tell it where to go. So we're going to call it detail activity, and we're going to take that class. We're also going to send that activity the index of the item that got clicked. So the first item is 0, the second item is 1, the third item is 2. And that way, on the other activity, we know which picture to show. So we're going to say show detail activity, put extra. And it's always a good idea in Android to use your package name up here right before the name of the thing that you want to pass. And that way it's not going to get conflicted with any other variables that might be floating around in your Android ecosystem. So we have to give a name to this, so let's call it item index. Or you can we'll just call it index. No, I'll call it item index. And what are we going to pass? We're going to pass I, oops, lowercase I, because in the on item click, I is going to be the index of the thing in the list that got clicked. So we're going to be passing that to the next screen, and then we can start it. So we're going to say start activity, and what's the intent? The intent is called show detail activity. So that should switch the screen when we click an item. Let's test what we have done. So right now it's going to switch screens, but all we're going to see is that little Android guy. So let's go ahead and click OK. And we'll watch this boot up. All right, so we have 3 items in our list. If I click one of them, it has taken me to the other screen. All right, great. So we can travel from one screen to the next. Now let's have that other screen determine which picture to show based upon the index that's being passed. Okay, I can see that this line right here got cut off a little bit, so I'm going to push that down so you can see the end of it a little bit better. And as I said, we're going to add pictures to the project now. So what we need to do next is get 3 pictures. Now you can use any 3 pictures that you want. It's just the point that we have a peach, a squash, and a tomato. You could take your own pictures like I did, or you could just Google some. So to put these in, it's actually going to be pretty easy. We're just going to drag and drop these into the drawable folder. But then we also have a problem that these images are going to be way too big for our device and could actually cause our program to crash because the image size is too big. So if I click on this and I look at the information, this is good to understand that the image itself that I have here is 3,264 by 2,448 pixels, and the phone that I took it on I think is 480 pixels wide. So this would never fit on my screen. I'm going to need to scale it. And there's no need to create multiple copies. We could actually do this in code. We can scale the image and make it fit on whatever device is being displayed on. It's also good to note that this is 3.3 megs. That's a particularly large image. So you just need 3 images, and just know that if they're way too big for the device, it will crash unless you scale it down to fit. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you where to put this. This is going to go into the drawable folder. All right, so in the resources, we're going to be putting our images here. There are multiple ways to do this. If you right-click, you could say Reveal in Finder, and that'll take you right to the folder. There's a similar process on the PC, and all we got to do is just drag and drop our items right in here. So I'm going to open up my downloads again, and I'm going to copy these 3 items, and I'm going to put them in that drawable folder. So I'm going to paste 3 items, and there they are. So I'm going to go ahead and close those now that I don't need that. And then this will take a minute, and it'll detect it, and you'll see another arrow out to here, or you can refresh like this, and that often will do the trick. And now you can see the 3 items listed right here. Okay, so now we can go over to our second activity, which is called detailActivity.java. And since this is not a launcher activity, we can ignore a couple of things, meaning that we're not going to skip that first screen, the main activity, and go right to this, but we could if we wanted to. So to launch this activity, there was an intent to launch it. And I'm going to nickname that intent IN or in, and I'm going to say get intent. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get the extra information that we sent to this activity that indicated which index to display. So we can call it index. It'll be an integer. And the index is going to have to get that extra information. So there is a method in the intent class called getIntExtra. So it happens to be an integer that's being passed. We gave it a name. So the name that we gave it was this big long package name, followed by, and this is not going to fit on the screen, so I'm going to shrink that down. As a matter of fact, what did we call it? We called it item index. Okay, so I'm just going to copy that and put that right there. And the other thing it's expecting in between the parentheses is a default value. Now I'm going to put -1 because it's common to say if something is not in an array, then return -1 because arrays don't have negative index values. Okay, next up, there's a lot of code here next for shrinking down the image. So I'm going to package this up into two smaller methods just to make the code a little bit more manageable and easier to read. So the first one is going to set the image that we want. So, oops, still in cap locks. So we're going to make a private method. It's going to return an integer which represents the index of the resource image. So we're going to call it setImage. Actually, I should call it getImage. So I'm going to call it getImage, and it's going to take a particular index. And we're just going to put a switch inside of this off of that particular index. So our index in our array is going to be different from the way that Android is indexing our resources. So two different indexes. I know that's a little confusing, but index 0 is going to correspond with whatever resource has for drawables and whatever it numbered peach. Oops, I meant to say return. All right, so return that drawable, which is really just an index value. All right, so number 2 is going to follow that same pattern, except for it's not going to be the peach. It's going to be the tomato. And case 2 is going to be the squash. Now, just for safekeeping, I'm going to say the default case is going to be return -1. All right, so that's going to get our image. Now, the bigger method is actually going to be the scaling of the image. So this one might seem a little overwhelming, but it's not that bad. So this method, oops, it's supposed to be a void method. That means it returns nothing. So ImageView. All right, so it's going to get an image view that we're going to be scaling an image for. So this is the image view that we're going to be passing down into it. And then the image that we want to scale inside of that image view we'll call pic. And we're using an integer because it's an index value from the resources again. All right, so we'll need 2 lines of code right off the bat. One is called, it's from the display class because we need to know what size screen we're dealing with. So this line of code is going to get the window manager and get the default display so that we can determine its size. The second line of code is just going to get an instance of the bitmap factory class, which is what we are going to use to scale the image. So again, the first line of code here is going to give us access to the screen, and the second line of code is going to give us access to some Java library class that scales images for us. Bitmap factory.options, capital O. We'll just call it options. All right, so those 2 lines of code basically set up the rest of this. So next up, we need to say these options in our bitmap factory. We need to know what the boundaries are that we're talking about. So we're going to turn on boundaries. Think of that as it's allowing us to kind of feel around the edges and determine the width and height of stuff. So the next line of code is going to allow us to take a look at a resource without actually having to draw it, which is going to save us a lot of memory resources and hopefully keep our app from crashing because it's overloaded with visual data. So we're going to get our resources, and we're going to take a look at whatever pick is. So if it's the peach, the tomato, or squash, it can take a look at it, look at its dimensions without actually drawing it. And remember that with our options instance. All right, the next two lines of code is going to get the width and height of that image, and then we're going to compare it against the screen. So we'll say image width is our bitmap factory that we're calling options.outer width, or out width. So that's going to basically like trace the boundaries, determine the size of pick. The next one is the screen itself. So we have the screen width. Now getWidth is a deprecated method, which means that it's out of date, but we're still going to use it anyway. That's why there's a line through it. So if image width is greater than screen width, we know there's going to be a problem, so we need to scale the image so that it fits. So we need to find out what the ratio here is of our image to our screen. So we can do that as simply as saying math.round, and we're going to get the floating point value of image width and divide that by the floating point version of screen width. The reason why we have to do that is because the round method takes two floats. But this is all going to get turned into an integer. All right, so now we can take our bitmap factory, which we're calling options, and its in sample size is going to be ratio. So that's going to set the scale factor for our new bitmap that we're about to draw. So the next thing that we got to do is we got to turn off our in-just decode bounds. So we had that turned on previously, so we got to turn it off now. And we're going to make a new bitmap. And we can call it scaled image, or scaled IMG. And it's going to be a bitmap factory, decode of a resource, get our resources. We're going to use pick, whatever it is. That could be the tomato, the squash, the peach. And we're passing in our options that we just went through. And we can finally take image and set image bitmap to our scaled image. So that was a lot of code just to get to that point. But that's it. That's going to scale our whole image. Now we're not calling this method yet, so our last little thing is to call these two methods. So just for some safekeeping, I'm going to say if index is greater than -1. So that means that it got past some information to launch this activity. We didn't use the default value of -1 or something else. So hopefully it's 0, 1, and 2, and not anything above that. You know, we could build in some more safeguards against that, but we're going to pretend that this is a sunny day scenario where everything's going right. Okay, so the first thing is we want to get that image. So the first method that we made was called getImage. So I'm going to call a variable called pick and set it equal, or have it hold the value of getImage at whatever index was passed in. Next up, we're going to scale this image in our new ImageView, which we haven't made yet. So I guess we need to make our ImageView. Let's do that first. So we have an ImageView, that we're going to call IMG, and it's going to hold a value of a search for find view by ID, look in resources for an ID called ImageView. Right, now we can use it. So we're going to take that image and we're going to scale pick with it. So, or that image view. So put pick in image view after it's been scaled. So if we didn't make any mistakes, let's go ahead and push save and run. And I'll run in the emulator. See how this goes. Pull this up. All right, so let's click on peach. Oh, and there's our peach. And tomato, there's the tomato. And squash, yep, there's our squash. Okay, so we've gone through and we've created the app. We've created a list and we've given it a custom layout for each, and we've incorporated a second activity that contains images.